Invincible versus Bayverse Transformers. Two of the most brutal entries into the Alien Goes to Earth genre. Who wins? Let's find out.
Piece of tin.
The premise of the video is pretty clear. The Invincibles are invading Mission City, and the Autobots have to defend it from the Invincibles. So the question of the video is, can the Autobots protect Mission City from the Invincible War? Let's answer that by looking at both sides. Let's start with Mark Grayson. Mark Grayson has three notable showings. The first of which is surviving against his father, Omni-Man. The second of which is helping his father on the planet Thraxa against the invading Viltrumites. And his third best feat is his fight against Conquest. However, that doesn't tell us how strong Mark or the other Viltrumites are. So how strong are they? Believe it or not, Omni-Man told us how strong him and Mark are.
How's it feel to save the world? Or at least the country?
Omni-Man first says that Mark saved a country, if not a planet.
Yeah, you should have seen the asteroid I diverted a few years ago, the size of Texas.
He then tells Mark right after that an asteroid he stopped a few years ago was the size of Texas. Assuming the asteroid that Mark stopped could destroy the planet, this means Omni-Man is much stronger than Mark, meaning Mark is around but downscales from Omni-Man. As for speed, Invincible historically has way less speed feats than attack potency and durability feats. For the show in particular, I only found one scene that's calcable, and there's only 3 different calcs I found on the internet, and it all uses the same arguments. Here's the conclusions of those speed calcs, and I'll link all of them in the description below. Now that we've addressed Mark's place among the Viltrumites, where do his alternate counterparts scale? What we see in Season 3, Episode 7 is they are around Mark, but inferior to him. Moreover, other of the Invincibles are even weaker, seeing how they're able to be killed by other heroes along with technology. So for the Invincibles, I would put all 18 of them somewhere around the country to even multi-continental ranges, and faster than light to possibly billions of times faster than light range. Last note I want to make is on abilities. Historically, the Invincible verse has always focused more on physical showings. There's not much in the way of hacks in verse, granted there's some interesting stuff like portal creation and whatnot, but that pales in comparison to the amount of emphasis Invincible has on its physical showings. For example, all the abilities Viltrumites have are all physical based abilities. They can fly, have a very good sense of balance and control. They have very good reaction speeds. They're physically powerful. They go very fast. All interesting abilities, but they're all geared more towards physical combat. Viltrumites are good, but they're not Mr. Mixie from DC. Moving on to Bayverse, how strong are they? Luckily, Bayverse is a lot less nuanced compared to Invincible. When you scale one character someplace, all the rest are sure to follow. This is a continuity thing in Transformers where in every continuity, every character in some way, shape, or form will scale to each other, even if it's a massive finite difference. It's still within the same ballpark. For example, Jazz, Ironhide, and Ratchet got into a fight with Brawl. After Brawl was knocked over and Megatron came in, he grabbed Jazz and flew off to a building. When Megatron had Jazz by a leg, Megatron, who's one of the strongest Decepticons, was budged by Jazz's shots. Jazz is actually one of the weaker Autobots, and he makes up for it by being really smart and really fast. Despite this, he's physically weaker than a lot of the other Autobots. He's debatably weaker than Ratchet even. Yet despite this, his shots budged Megatron, who's one of the strongest Decepticons. Consistently, he's top 3. This means at some point, you must cap Cybertronians within the same tier. So where I scale one Cybertronian, the rest are sure to scale in the same tier, whether it's higher or lower on the spectrum. Moving on to stats, I'm going to use Optimus Prime as the bar to scale everyone else. With the low end, we have Planetary to launch Planetary, and here's why. The matrix of leadership is around the same level, if not above the Allspark in the amount of energy that it has, and this would include the pillars, which pulled Cybertron through in a matter of minutes. Canonically, the size of Cybertron is the size of Saturn, but we don't know if that's the same case for Bayverse if we did the calculations. Also, I would have to do the calculations anyway, just to see how much energy the pillars were outputting, and that is a lot. So eyeballing, we can say Planetary to launch Planetary, make of it what you will. For the Midball, it's Universal to Universal Plus, and here's why. Optimus Prime was able to damage and defeat the Fallen. The Fallen, his body is able to contain the energies of the Big Bang, and it's stated at least once in both of his guidebook pages. And his guidebook pages applied to the Fallen before the events of the end of the movie. So the Fallen is actually stronger at the end of the movie than where he was stated in the guidebook. Therefore, I would lean closer to Universal Plus in this case. For the Highball, low multiversal to multiversal, and here's why. On those same guidebook pages for the Fallen, it's not only stated that he's an omniversal threat, but that he can also destroy creation. We can quantify creation, by the way. The Allspark, which was actually created at the dawn of the universe by the Big Bang, knows that there is 17 plus dimensions. Meaning, there is a multiverse where there are multiple universes inside of that multiverse. And the Fallen is able to destroy all of it. Therefore, we are able to argue low multiversal to even multiversal. For combat speed, it's pretty direct. Megatron's statement is fairly blunt but can be interpreted in multiple ways, so we're going to do a low end, a mid end, and a high end of Megatron's speed so that we can satisfy all parties present. So, first and foremost, Megatron had to travel between galaxies. The gap between galaxies directly requires something to be moving at light speed or faster. So at the low end, we'll have Megatron at light speed. The midball and the highball use the same logic but interpret it in two different ways. For the midball, we will be using 100 galaxies. What you do is you take the amount of galaxies, in this case we already said it, 100, and then you take the gap between galaxies, add that together, then divide that by 5 years, or approximately 1,826 days. Assuming you did the equation right, you should get 60,241 times the speed of light, or over 60,000 times FTL. For the high end, we do the exact same thing, but instead use 10,000 galaxies, and then we end up getting over 6 million times the speed of light. For Cybertronians, the topic of abilities is a separate question entirely. It's more so their arsenal. Cybertronians mostly have guns, melee weapons, overshields. The only thing superpower-like is their physiology, in that it's not exactly human, so they have to some degree physical immortality, in whatever way you want to quantify it. There isn't a whole lot I could say about Hack's powers, because compared to Invincible, which has portal creation and atomic manipulation and all that other stuff, it just beats Transformers in terms of hacks. That's just it. So, who do I think wins? In my opinion, it's the Cybertronians, and here's why. The parallel world marks have the speed advantage. They're over thousands of times faster. No one's contesting that in the slightest. The problem is, the Cybertronians, in general, are universal to multiversal, which is so much of a one-shot increase, to the point that were they to even touch the Viltrumites, they would all simply not be there anymore. Not to mention, they're older and far more experienced against adversaries on their level, so they would be able to figure out how to contain and then defeat the multiple parallel world marks. So in my opinion, the Cybertronians win. However, that's just my opinion on the matter. If you have something else you'd like to suggest in the comments, please do so. I love to talk to other people about their own positions on the same topic, because it's always interesting to see different points of view. Anyway, if you liked this video, please give a like, share it around. That would be awesome. Subscribe. The more views I get, the more likes I get, the more money I get, the more money I get, the higher incentive I have to make more content. The more content I make, the more stuff you guys have to watch. You know, it's a win-win for the both of us. So, you know, if you think I've earned it, please do so. That would be awesome, and I couldn't even thank you with words if you did that. Anyhow, enough babbling. My name is Nothing Important here, and I'll see you later, legends. Peace.